And bear with me just 1 second. We have more sheets in the back, I do believe. As of right now, I have 20 people signed up in front of me. I believe there are more to come. Okay, and the way the public hearing will work is you'll have 3 minutes to speak. I'll announce the name of the next speaker and the following speaker. You'll have 3 minutes from the time I announce your name, and proceed to the mic, give your name and address for the record, and you'll hear a signal, little beeping signal when the 3 minutes is up. And actually, to conform with that, we have a lot of folks wishing to talk tonight, and I, rather than reduce the time to talk, I'd ask that you be concise and step down once your time is completed according to the signal. So with that, I'll call the first speaker, Leslie Rubenstein, followed by Jeff Ford.
You have to excuse my using a computer. I'm trying to act younger than I am. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for holding this public meeting. My name is Leslie Rubenstein. My address is 30767 Kennedy Lane in Cottage Grove, unincorporated Cottage Grove. And I am here tonight on behalf of the Blackberry Pie Society, which some of you know. We are a political action committee registered with the state. We're in Cottage Grove, and we lean to the left, and like many other local groups represented here tonight, left wing to right wing and in between, we oppose those sections, the two sections of the NDAA that permit the possibility of indefinite detention of U.S. citizens. So for the record, we have been opposed for 10 years to indefinite detention, unlawful surveillance, and also torture, because of the authorization to use military force, and as well the Patriot Act signed into law after 9/11. We sent a resolution to you last fall. I think many of the local groups here tonight did as well, asking you, the Board of Commissioners, to oppose this indefinite detention in some way and to ensure Lane County residents that we would not be detained indefinitely. You, on February 11th, considered a order or resolution, and I have the title. It's long. It says, in the matter of expressing federal priorities and reaffirmation of previous oaths to uphold laws, and you did not act on that, and I'm glad, because in my opinion it was wishy-washy. So why do we want you to publicly oppose the NDAA? Let me ask you, the four of you here tonight, do you individually believe that, based on the U.S. Constitution, all American citizens should be permitted a fair and timely trial, if detained? I would expect you to. You know, if you don't, then maybe you don't trust the U.S. Constitution, but I expect you to. As my representatives, you are my mayors. And does it matter to you if some American citizens could be denied that civil right? Some special group. Would that matter to you if some of them could be denied that right? It matters to me, and I believe it matters to you too. And if not, I would say perhaps you don't trust the U.S. Constitution. We think it matters, and the unclear language in the NDAA is what we're concerned about. We think that that means that Congress and the President, this President, President Obama, but any President, doesn't trust that the U.S. Constitution is strong enough to deter terrorism and doesn't trust civil liberties for all Americans. So when we take a stand against the incremental erosion of our civil liberties, we speak up.
Ms. Rubenstein, that is 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for your time.
Next, then, we have Jeff Ford, followed by Lorene Long.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Ford from Corvallis, Oregon. I'm the Northern Oregon Coordinator for Oath Keepers. Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of currently serving military, reserves, National Guard, veterans, peace officers, firefighters, and citizens who all swore an oath to the Constitution. Oath Keepers reaches out to both current serving and veterans, to remind them of their oaths, to teach them more about the Constitution they swore to defend, and to inspire them to defend it. Oath keepers all over Oregon are very concerned over the two provisions within the NDAA 2012, sections 1021 and 1022, which are unconstitutional and don't have anything to do with funding the armed forces. Here on November 19, 2013, even Commissioner Sorensen mentioned that the federal judge has ruled that provisions 1021 and 1022 are unconstitutional. These provisions deny anyone's right to due process of the law and also allows the federal government to detain or even kill any U.S. citizen for any reason that they can conjure up, which makes this a nonpartisan issue. For instance, government can just say that someone holding up a sign on an overpass or typing their concerns out about anything on the internet is a belligerent act, which is absurd. We have veterans and citizens in all of our counties that love their country, their constitutionally protected rights, and should have every right to be proud and speak up about it no matter where they are standing. It's never okay to deny anyone's constitutionally protected rights. I volunteered myself to create Oath Keepers chapters throughout northern part of Oregon and would very much like to see other counties' commissioners create an ordinance or resolution that will stop the federal government from implementing these unconstitutional provisions. As Lane County Commissioners, you have a unique opportunity to lead the way for our state in making sure that constitutionally protected rights of all U.S. citizens remain intact and not infringed upon. I ask that you continue to honor your oath of office, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Laureen Long, followed by Logan Dorman.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Laureen Long. I am from Lebanon. I came here tonight to remind you that the provisions we've spoken of this evening are steps towards tyranny in this country that go against the rights of every citizen here. Creating laws to nullify these provisions is the just and honorable thing to do with the powers that you have. That being said, I want to thank all of you for having the courage and fortitude necessary to take the steps needed to protect our rights and show the way for the leaders everywhere in this country that they need to do to uphold their oath of office. Remember, you are not alone. Everybody here is behind you, and you have our full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Logan Dorman, followed by Lois Inman.
Pardon the handwriting, it's Logan Dono.
Thank you.
Greetings and good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to thank you for making this event possible. I represent the over 200 members of Lane 12, 912 Lane, and I think I fairly represent their point of view in the matter at hand. Often when talking about law or politics, one hears in response to questions that an issue is complicated, or that the right thing to do depends. Fortunately, this issue of protecting our civil rights is no more complicated than your oath of office, and depends on nothing more than a clear understanding of our rights as citizens of this nation and this state. We are all aware of the potential evil that government represents. We all admit to the corrupting influence of power and the responsibility of citizens and their local leadership to remain vigilant to government overreach, assumption of forbidden powers, and the weakening of civil liberties and freedom. This is why we are here tonight, to ask you to move to protect us and our civil rights. The power of a government official to merely declare a citizen a threat, to cast upon that citizen a popular label for an enemy, and thereby legalize kidnapping and imprisonment without charge or trial, cannot be allowed, and it cannot in any way be thought as in keeping with those fundamental human rights we've enumerated in our law, in which the writers of that law believed were inviolable by any government. Indeed, I ask you, what kind of person, what sort of elected official would grant himself the power to do such a thing to any of us? What sort of person would want that option? So I would ask you to consider two names from our own political history: Richard Nixon, Lyndon Johnson. Between them, they were responsible for the death of tens of thousands of American lives and millions of lives from countries deemed to be enemies. I ask you, would you be comfortable letting either one of these men have the power of these two sections of the NDAA? Would you be comfortable with some of their political appointees being delegated this sort of power? And again, I ask you, what sort of person would grant themselves such a power? And again, I ask you, will you protect us? So we call on you to show courage and to show leadership. We ask you to set an example of commitment and integrity. We ask you to lead the way for municipal and county officials nationwide to consider the threat that this legislation presents and the terrible misuse of government process that created it. We ask you to stand behind your oaths of office and to stand between us and the government out of control. We ask you to issue a resolution demanding the removal of these two sections from the NDAA, followed by a legal ordinance which announces to our nation that we, the citizens of Lane County, have seen these provisions inserted into the NDAA and clearly declare to all that this exercise of abuse of human rights will never be tolerated in our towns, our homes, or our county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Not ever. Never. Have you any questions?
May I ask that we can assume the applause after each speaker? And typically in a public hearing, we don't allow applause. Since everybody's here for the same event, or basically with the same opinion tonight, grant a little bit of levity in that. So if you would keep the applause to a minimum, that way we can get through the speakers. And we'll assume that you're clapping very, very loudly each time someone speaks. But I'll clap for you.
But I was doing this for the applause.
You have 3 full minutes starting now.
I don't need 3 minutes. My name's Lois Inman. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and an aunt, and all the usual things. But I'm here tonight because I'm really concerned about the direction our country's taking, and I feel like there's so little we can do about what's going on a larger scale, but there's so much we can do on a local level. I actually live in Douglas County, so you wonder what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is what I always do here. I'm involved in Lane County. I'm just a mile the other side of the border into Douglas County. And so I'm hoping that the way Lane County handles this will guide other counties like Douglas County to do something about it also. I'm a part of Occupy Cottage Grove, and the reason why I got involved in that is because, which is actually South Lane, North Douglas, is because I was concerned about the direction this country's going. I was concerned about my own safety and safety of others. I'm also a peace activist and a Democratic Party precinct person. My fear is that what will happen if this goes on and is not stopped is that I will not feel safe being in Lane County anymore. I come here to socialize and to do business, and I'm sure there's plenty of us that live outside of Lane County who do that. And so I would like to be able to continue to do that without worrying about my safety or my loved one's safety. The current language in this doesn't protect me. In fact, it sells me down the river. We got some beautiful rivers, but thanks, I don't want to. It does not, by saying they have the option, it does not protect my rights. There's no shall not. So I would like those loopholes closed up. I commend you for having this session, and I also want to commend you for your courage in this, and I would like to see you continue in that vein and take the courage to pass an ordinance that says this will not happen in Lane County. And I hope that by doing that, you'll be an example for other counties, as I said, so that Douglas County and others will follow. And we have home rule in Oregon, so this is something that can happen. I think I'm outside. How about that? No applause, please.
Thank you, Ms. Inman. Nancy McCullum, followed by Becky Lemler. Nancy McCullum next, followed by Becky Lemler.
Just stay right up there.
Becky, you can sit right. You can pose. Very good. Okay.
Hi. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this matter of grave importance to me and those I care about. I am Nancy McCollum, an ordinary middle-class person, 69 years old, a licensed psychotherapist, and a wife, and a grandmother. My husband is retired military and a retired public servant. I live in Cottage Grove. I've lived there for 12 years. I became very concerned about the loss of our rights when the Patriot Act was first passed, and could see even then that there was no guarantee that American citizens would be exempt from detention as put forth in this law. I joined the Occupy movement because it seemed like an opportunity to help others see that our country is in danger of losing its democracy. I fear for my family and my granddaughter. We are peaceful people who do not break laws or sympathize with the enemy, but suppose someone were to decide that me being part of a peace vigil or a peaceful demonstration means that I support someone the U.S. is having hostilities with. My family could be seen as suspect, too, and we could all be detained by the military without proof and without access to legal counsel until the end of said hostilities. And who is to know when that will be? Think of your children and your grandchildren. Do they have friends who could be suspect? Do they participate in activities that might be interpreted as supporting belligerents? The language of this law is vague, and that's what makes it dangerous. The law gives authorities the option of detaining U.S. citizens, as pointed out earlier. It does not exclude any of us citizens. There's a young girl, 8 or so years old, who occasionally joins us in the peace vigil. She likes to wave the pretty flags and talk to adults who are kind and supportive. She shows off for us, and we enjoy her company. Will she be tagged because she has been seen with us? If you think anyone is safe, you are wrong. I think the writers of this law probably did not intend to frighten American citizens in this way. But if that is so, why won't Congress change the language of the law so that the citizens of this country are legally excluded from detention? Commissioners, please do whatever you can to restore our rights as Americans and protect us from this law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Becky Lemler, followed by Wayne Lemler.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us to come speak to you tonight and coming back after work. My name is Becky Lemler. I live in Elmira, and I'm an executive committee member of the Lane County Republican Party, as well as a voting member of the Oregon State Central Committee. Not that I'm speaking for them, but I have seen many resolutions being written and passed, and though resolutions are a nice gesture, they rarely accomplish much of anything beyond a short-lived, feel-good statement at best. Tonight I want to cover more of what Section 1021D really means. This is where many congressmen are standing today to defend their support of this bill because it gives the false impression that the NDAA doesn't apply to American citizens. This section reads, quote, "Nothing in this section is intended to limit or expand the authority of the President or the scope of the authorization for use of military force," unquote. Commissioner, these words do not offer protection at all to the American people because the authority this is talking about is already expanded in the Patriot Act, which allows for federal agents to seize property and persons and records without a warrant, without probable cause, based on mere suspicion, with no review of a judge to create this warrant. This is arbitrary power. I am therefore requesting my county commissioners to create an ordinance, not a resolution, but an ordinance countywide reaffirming the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments to be upheld against any federal agencies acting under detention powers granted by the NDAA. I am not in favor of a wait-and-see approach. Please do not turn a blind eye to what this act can and has done to Americans. I implore you to uphold your oath and draft an ordinance to prevent the further thievery of our freedoms and liberties by our own government. Who is it that has the highest authority in the land? It is the county sheriff, not the federal government. I want to give you back the resolution that we passed last year, and also some papers on the amendments, so highlighted so you could see which ones pertain. And as John Adams wrote, liberty, once lost, is lost forever. when the people once surrender their share in the legislature and their right of defending the limitations upon the government and of resisting every encroachment upon them, they can never again regain it.
Thank you. Wayne Lemler, followed by David I. Piccioni.
Commissioners, my name is Wayne Lemler. I'm from Elmira. And Mr. Kyler on February 11th raised some concerns about possible what actions the commissioners could take. Would it be construed as civil disobedience and issues like that concerning liability. So I have this to offer. The general misconception is that any statute passed by legislators bearing the appearance of law constitutes the law of the land. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any statute to be valid must be in agreement. It is impossible for a law which violates this Constitution to be valid. This is succinctly stated as follows, and these are statements made by courts. All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. That was Mayberry versus Madison. When rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. That's Miranda versus Arizona. And finally, an unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties, affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. That was Norton versus Shelby County. Now, our forefathers actually fought a war over these issues. And in our Declaration of Independence, they stated numerous charges against the King of England. And I'm only going to list 3 of them. And I'd like for you to see if these sound familiar. He, that would be the King of England, has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power. Sound familiar? For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. Does that sound familiar to the NDAA? For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Now, our forefathers, history has judged them, and they were judged for decisive and bold action. Now, we here do not ask you to go to war against the federal government. We do ask you to take bold and decisive action. And my final quote from Isaiah: "Woe to those who decree unjust statutes, and to those who continually record unjust decisions, to deprive the needy of justice, and to rob the poor of my people of their rights." Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Bob Sowden, followed by Robert Baker.
David, I would show you first.
Yes, I'm sorry, David Petroni, followed by Bob Sowden.
Esteemed Commissioners, my name is David Piccioni. I live in Eugene. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I have lived and learned a lot of things in other countries too, where I've lived. I very much believe that for doing social justice work, you have to be in the present, in the here and now. However, to explain to you the problems with the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, I'm going to give you some context 45 to 30 years ago in a Latin American country where I grew up called Argentina. When I was a child, shielded by innocence in the country where I was raised, there were several military dictators in a row. Ways of thinking that deviated from elitism and plutocracy were punished with torture, information extraction, and death in the shadows. To put it simply, this is what America's heading for if we don't change the direction we're going in. Pentagon budgetary spending exceeds 50%. That means that over half of our taxes go to finance the government and the military. If you add unbridled corporate rights and power acquisition, you have what Nazi ally Benito Mussolini defined as fascism. If you think what happens in other countries hasn't got much to do in the U.S., you're dead wrong. It was because of American design Operation Condor that Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Paraguay, Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina's repressive regimes were put in place, crushing people's elected democracy. Operation Condor, as it was called, was Henry Kissinger's and the Chicago Boys' Frankenstein devilish baby. If I had to fight to defend myself and loved ones, I'd be very happy to be twice as strong as my enemy. The U.S. military, with nuclear, chemical, biological, economical, and political force, is 5 times stronger than China, the second world power next to us. We support repressive regimes all over the world for corporate, political, strategic reasons. This is a short list of them. Israel, Egypt, Indonesia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Algeria, Ethiopia, Congo, Uzbekistan, Thailand, Nepal, Somalia, Colombia, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, India, and Pakistan, and scores of others. These last two, India and Pakistan, are at war with each other over Kashmir, and the U.S. military contractors sell weapons to both sides. Saudi Arabia, one of the last remaining monarchies, has anti-women policies and was home for 15 of the 19 September hijackers. Why are we supporting regimes like this and expected not to come home to roost? What we'd like from you is laws to protect us and all the world's citizens from arbitrary prosecution from governments like ours. We need attorneys, habeas corpus, no rendition, and the police to protect us. Thank you. And if I have a minute, I want to define for you, is my time over?
Thank you. 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Now Bob Stoughton, followed by Robert Baker.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Bob Soden. I live in Cottage Grove, and I'll face to it. I thank you so much for holding this session and listening to the grievance by the citizens of the Lane County. I have been a Lane County resident since 2005. I joined the Cottage Grove 912 project as a founding member in March 2009. An organization that is bound by our bylaws to be nonpartisan voice in restoring and protecting individual liberties, constitutional governance, physical responsibility, and free markets. I also volunteered with the Oregon Citizens Lobby in 2012, currently a team leader for the Economic Development and Land Use, where we analyze and rate bills if they oppose or support 5 core principles: physical responsibility, free markets, limited government, local control, personal choice and responsibility, leaving the politics to the politicians. Sections 1021 and 1022 of the National Defense Act, NDAA, are being laid out by citizens and groups of diverse backgrounds and views of government policy. It is clear that these sections are making a mockery of the U.S. Constitution, where all U.S. citizens are due the process of law and a warrant is required. The Cottage Grove 912 Project are opposed to any law that allows the indefinite detention of U.S. citizens without due process of law. Alex Currier, the Intergovernmental Relations Manager, has stated how laws are changed, where he offers 2 options. 1, by both houses of Congress and the President's signature. 2, by the Supreme Court with a decision that is unconstitutional. How does this process get to that point? By citizens petitioning the government a redress of grievances that we are doing this evening. It is admirable that the Lane County has been on the forefront against Section 1021 and 1022 of the NDAA. And yes, our 2 senators have opposed the NDAA. I can only ask, is that enough? I answer no. Every avenue must be explored that will demonstrate that Lane County will oppose any attempt at violating the constitutional rights of Lane County residents. Mr. Currier also used an example where some county sheriffs had expressed they would not follow any laws that infringe on a Second Amendment right to bear arms. In the case of the NDAA, it would be imperative to stand firm and, if necessary, create county legislation when it is obvious citizens are concerned of being detained without due process of law. The Lane County Sheriff, as our elected representative, should defend the rights of citizens of Lane County and uphold the Constitution. Words have meaning. When there are so many citizens that are concerned about these sections, it is apparent there is a problem. I ask the Commissioners to please consider doing everything in their authority to bring closure to Sections 1021 and 1022. Serve and protect Lane County residents. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the written testimony you provided, Mr. Sullivan. We have Robert Baker, followed by James Knepler.
Thank you. I'm Robert Baker from Oak Ridge, Oregon, native son. In Oak Ridge, we have what's called community-based policing, and this occurs all across our country. Our police officers are part of the community. Their children go to our schools. They attend the same churches. They're as equally involved in our community operations as the rest of us. But the last few years across this United States, it's been changing. Our small towns are being influenced by the federal government and given huge amounts of money. They're being militarized. Our small town police forces are showing up in full battle gear with automatic weapons, armored cars, and spy drones are starting to show up. This militarization of our police forces is a bad road to be going down. I have first-hand knowledge. When we took down the dictator Noriega in Panama, I was part of an Army Reserve organization made up of police officers that went to Panama. We spent 6 months trying to take down the barbed wire and sandbags and trying to reintegrate the militarized police back into the Panamanian community. You know, they had the typical things you saw of people disappearing, never to be seen again in the police stations, people being arrested without warrant, property being seized and disposed of randomly. We tried to intervene and change all that. And that's where our militarized police departments are headed. In fact, they're kicking in doors at 5:30 in the morning, shooting people's dogs, taking property without warrant. This needs to stop. The supreme enforcement of our county is our sheriff. We need to specifically encourage and request that the county sheriff upholds his oath to serve and protect the Oregon and U.S. constitutions and protects the people in Lane County from any attempt to implement the NDAA or any other law that conflicts with any of the constitutional rights of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. James Knepler, followed by Glenn Stutzman.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The first two paragraphs of my remarks have already been spoken by speakers before me, from the left and the right, and to me there is no irony in that at all. It really boils down to whether or not our constitutional rights still matter to you, the Commissioners, matter to our government. All of these rights were carefully crafted by the framers because they knew from their study of historical and contemporaneous tyrannies that nothing matters if the powers of government are not constrained by the inviolable civil rights and civil liberties of its citizens. Now we see in sections 1021 and 1022 of the NDAA that someone has decided that these things no longer matter. This is the law of the land, that armed agents of the government can now come to your home in the dead of night, enter forcibly without a warrant, arrest you and members of your family, and detain you indefinitely without formal charges. Does that matter? I can tell you that for the people in this room, coming at it from a pretty widely divergent set of socio-political views, it matters crucially, and I suspect it matters deeply to you as well. When you pass a resolution, we know that resolutions in other jurisdictions to create hate-free zones, for example, haven't been especially effective. May I suggest that a resolution that merely expresses the Commissioner's displeasure with the loss of our civil liberties will not be any more effective. Our Commissioners are the only people in this room who can take official and effective actions against these outrageous sections of the NDAA. Now, if all this really does matter to you, then please consider an ordinance that requires that no resources of Lane County government, including its law enforcement resources, shall be used against American citizens in support of sections 1021 and 1022 of the NDAA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glenn Stutzman, followed by Joseph Lewis.
My name is Glenn Stutzman. I'm a Republican PCP, a Reagan Republican, or maybe even a JFK Democrat. I also chair the 912 Lane County group. As of today's IRS rules, written by unelected bureaucrats, I believe it is legal for me to express the group's opinion on today's subject. I've changed my work schedule to be here at the expense of a few $100s to my business. The NDAA Articles 1021, 1022 reduces the liberties of U.S. citizens to those of lesser third world countries that are run by dictators. Under these articles, a general use of the term belligerent is used. Other sources, as far back as 2007, have shown that the DHS definition of belligerent to possibly be veterans, gun owners, Tea Partiers, anti-abortion activists, people voicing opposition to Obamacare, or even apply to people that disagree with the establishment media's version of controversial events. The definition ultimately is left to the whim of any president. The administration expressly asked language preventing American citizens from being subject to indefinite detention without trial be removed from the final bill. This is an obvious effort to suppress political dissent, similar to the IRS unequal treatment of 501c4 groups. I have personal experience with that. The community we live in has little influence over national affairs, so at times it becomes necessary to bolster our defense against the federal usurpation of our constitutional rights. The second paragraph of Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution states that federal law is only superior to state law if they are made pursuant to the U.S. Constitution. As Articles 1021 and 1022 of the 2012 NDAA are in direct conflict with the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments, what is commonly called nullification must be invoked against these articles. You gentlemen are on the last line of defense of our civil liberties. Even at the possible loss of federal welfare payments, we must do our part in Lane County and pass an ordinance in opposition to these two articles. This will support a similar effort at the state level if timely relief is not found at the federal level. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Sussman. Joseph Lewis, followed by Stephen Riley.
Evening, Commissioners. My name is Joseph Lewis. I'm here on behalf of the University of Oregon College Republicans, and I can honestly say I represent a lot of the youth who were present at the Dorchester Conference earlier this month, last month. The NDAA is serious to me and the fellow college Republicans with me because the law supports the ability of the federal government to overreach and overstep their constitutional limitations established to protect the sovereignty of the individual. This law is atrocious from the get-go due to its withdrawing of the habeas corpus and leaves the civilian in the hands of the government in terms of the process of trial. Albeit in this time of intense terrorist actions and on the anniversary of the Boston bombings, this is very important to us as a society. Both at home and abroad, we have given the government the power to protect us. As in the Constitution, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense. However, the NDAA, by restricting rights of citizens, is against the common defense. And the longer the federal government is allowed to overstep its boundaries, the closer the threat of right restrictions come to the doors of Eugene. County Commissioners, I implore you to protect our rights by implementing protective procedures against this law, herein by protecting our freedoms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Stephen Riley, followed by Zachary Hagan.
I'm Stephen Riley. I reside at 2212 Onyx Street, Eugene, Oregon. I thank you for this opportunity. Joan, I would encourage you with the strongest possible means to pass the ordinance to take the opportunity to protect the citizens of this county. Your authority to do that comes from the U.S. Constitution, particularly in the limitations of federal government in Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17, in the 10th Amendment, as well as the state constitution and the Act of 1859 of bringing Oregon into the Union of the States. Furthermore, the cases that were mentioned earlier, Marbury versus Madison, Shelby County versus Norton County, or Norton County, correction, Norton versus Shelby County, and Miranda versus Madison, or Arizona, are all U.S. Supreme Court cases. Those have not been overturned or superseded. Those also give you the authority to take this action. Question is, can this happen here? Will the federal government come and take action like this? Sadly, I would have to say, yes, there's a distinct possibility. We've seen the incursion of the federal government very recently just in Nevada. We've had other incursions here in Oregon, where Sheriff Gilbertson out of Judson County and Sheriff Palmer. Is that my time?
That's 3 minutes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Zachary Hagan, followed by Charlie Swanson. Before Mr. Hagan, I understand we do have more sheets in the back of the room. Can I ask staff to bring those forward? Zachary Hagan, followed by Charlie Swanson.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Zachary Hagan. I'm from Crestwell, and I'm the Lane County Coordinator for Oath Keepers. I've served 5 years in the United States military. When I swore in the military, I took an oath. Just because my time in service has expired, my oath never does. The fight for our rights and freedoms happens every day because they are constantly under attack. I believe in our rights and freedoms. I believe in the freedom of speech, and that no entity has the authority to take that away. I also believe in our right to trial as everyone in a free society should. I believe in the right to bear arms because there may come a time that you must protect yourself, your loved ones, and your rights. In 2012, Congress passed the NDAA, an act that is passed every year. But in 2012, they stuck sections 1021 and 1022 in the middle of in a very dishonest way. In sections 1021, they discuss the dispositions under the law of war. It reads, the disposition of a person under the law of war, as described in subsection A, may include the following. Detention under the law of war without trial until the end of hostilities authorized by the authorization for use of military force. This is direct violation of our Fifth Amendment, being deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and the Seventh, which states the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. It continues with transferring the custody of persons to the country of origin or any foreign country or any other foreign entity. The thought of being held in another country, perhaps by a private corporation, is an extremely scary thought. The laws of war are much different from the civilian and constitutional laws that we have enjoyed in our country for over 2 centuries. Laws of war on American soil must never be allowed. We want to have our constitutional rights reaffirmed here in this county, and we want to install measures that prohibit any form of tyranny. You have our full support in this matter, and I would like to thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Charlie Swanson, followed by Crystal Perkins.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Charlie Swanson. I've been a resident of Lane County for 35 years. I'm also the chair of the Platform Committee of the Democratic Party of Lane County, which has passed resolution urging elected officials to work towards an NDAA clearly consistent with human rights in the U.S. Constitution. I'm happy to be here working with people whom I often disagree politically. Despite our disagreements, we all agree that the right to due process is appropriate, always appropriate. As Oregon Senator Merkley said when he was trying to correct the problems of Section 1021 during the 2013 reauthorization, some argue that citizens should not be concerned about Section 1021 because they say it exempts American citizens. Not true. In fact, the Senate considered an amendment with such language and rejected it. So why would the Senate reject such language? Maybe because they don't want to prevent such an injustice. A covered person can be detained until the end of hostilities. Without a trial. Which hostilities? At least the hostilities that we have between the U.S. and Al-Qaeda. Would you want your children detained until the end of hostilities between the U.S. and Al-Qaeda? We want Lane County to create an ordinance to ensure that anyone detained in Lane County is ensured of due process, including the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury, to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with witnesses against them, as our Fifth and Sixth Amendments guarantee us. Lane County officials further should not cooperate with federal authorities in detention or transfer of a person if there's reason to believe that those authorities will not afford the appropriate constitutional protections of due process. Further, Lane County should make it clear to our senators and representatives they should continue their efforts to get rid of the ambiguous and probably unconstitutional portions of the NDAA. We should never have to wonder if the authorization of our national defense is upholding the Constitution. That should be assumed. It should be as fundamental as protecting our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Crystal Perkins, followed by Tad Lewick.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Crystal Perkins. I'm a resident of Eugene, and I'm here tonight as a representative for PANDA. As a young adult in this community, I have recently become more involved with local politics. I've become aware with how dangerous the NDAA Sections 1021 and 1022 truly are. As you know, Sections 1021 and 1022 allows the U.S. government to come in, take anybody they find suspicious, and hold them in detention indefinitely without a trial and without due process. Therefore, this means that everybody that stands behind me on this issue can also be in danger and have the chance of being detained for just the act of supporting me. I'm the kind of person that is not afraid to stand up for what I believe in. I believe in the Constitution that our founding fathers has provided for us, and I do believe that these two sections violates that Constitution. As a person standing before you, I know all the risks that I am taking part in. Speaking out against the government and asking for something to be done here on local county level can be seen as committing a belligerent act with the potential of being detained under the NDAA. Growing up in this country, I have learned that everybody is entitled to their rights enshrined in the Constitution, and to see these rights being taken away frightens me. The Constitution, as we all know, starts with the words, "We the people." Well, we the people of Lane County would like to be able to live without the fear of our loved ones being taken away. With that being said, I would like to say thank you for all the time you have put into this very important issue and ask you that you protect the rights of Lane County citizens by implementing protective procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Todd Lewick, followed by Martin Ellis Williams.
Thank you. My name is Tad Lewick. I don't have any prepared statement for tonight. But what I have noticed about tonight's procedures is the ambiguity of language that's in the NDAA. It really concerns me that such legislation can be passed and be construed in so many different ways. I believe the Constitution is very clear language. The Constitution protects our rights to be able to have a trial by our peers, to be able to have the freedoms that we have enjoyed for over 200 years. I would just urge you that you would hear these citizens that are here. It's we the people that govern this country. We need to stand up as the people and be able to let Washington know and the people who craft legislation like this that we're not going to stand for it anymore. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lewick. Martin Ellis Williams, followed by Jack Dresser.
I want to briefly talk about the history of emergency in the U.S. In the last 100 years. United States Code Title 50A, Trading with the Enemy Act, October 6, 1917, discussed enemy belligerence. At that time, the citizens of the United States were excluded. Then came 12 U.S. Code 95A, Regulation of Transactions and Foreign Exchange of Gold and Silver, Property Transfers, Vested Interest, Enforcement and Penalties. Established a constitutional dictatorship, and it included citizens of the U.S. as enemy belligerents. This is from the Cornell University website. Extension and termination of national emergency powers under the Trading with the Enemy Act. Notwithstanding the amendment made by subsection A, amending paragraph 1 of this section, the authorities conferred upon the President by section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act, which were being exercised with respect to a country on July 1st, 1977, as a result of a national emergency declared by the President before such date, may continue to be exercised with respect to such country, except that unless extended, the exercise of such authority shall terminate, subject to the savings provisions of the second sentence of Section 101A of the National Emergencies Act of Title 50, War and National Defense, at the end of the 2-year period beginning on the date of enactment of the National Emergencies Act, September 14, 1976. The President may extend the exercise of such authorities for 1-year periods upon a determination for each such extension that the exercise of such authorities with respect to such country for another year is in the national interest of the United States. Thanks.
Thank you. Jack Dresser, followed by Eric Bays, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm Jack Dresser. I live up the Mackenzie Riverways. I'm a semi-retired research scientist and National Vice Chair of the Veterans for Peace Working Group on Palestine and the Middle East. You know, Veterans for Peace is an organization that works vigorously against the illegal wars that the United States wages. And in violation of the Constitution, we have attacked 3 countries in the last 10 years that violate the United Nations Charter, which is the supreme law of the land under Article 6 of the Constitution. And we've got to stand up to this, all of us. All of us as individuals, all of us at every level of government have to protect the Constitution. As a U.S. Army officer, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Only the Constitution. The oath doesn't require us to support and defend any superior officer right up through the President. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. And it has power only if people demand it. And a great example is Lieutenant Aaron Watada, whose parents live here, who stood up to the United States government by refusing service, refusing deployment to Iraq because he recognized it was an illegal war. One first lieutenant stood up to the United States government, and at his court-martial, the law officer refused to allow him any of his expert witnesses that would have attested to his claims, even were afraid to allow him to testify. And they actually declared a mistrial to prevent his testimony and had to end up allowing him a general discharge. So, we all have to stand up for the Constitution. That includes you guys. And I would like to see a law, an ordinance, as suggested here earlier, that you will not support any federal officer attempting to exercise any authority here that violates the Constitution as you understand it, and it's not that hard to understand.
Eric Bays, followed by Rick Gold.
Thank you for having this hearing tonight. My name is Eric Bays. I live at 4381 Markham Lane here in Eugene. And I'm a currently serving officer in the U.S. Army JAG Corps. I'm here in my personal capacity and not as a military officer, but I've had extensive training in the law of war and the use of force from some of the military's top attorneys, and I'm deeply troubled by the law that we're discussing here tonight. Our U.S. government has already justified its authority to kill U.S. citizens on a battlefield that they consider to be worldwide. They consider the U.S. territories to also be part of that battlefield. And in a time of crisis, this law that we're discussing tonight can be used to oppress the people of this country. I urge you to pass legislation not only to not cooperate with this law, but also to prosecute any government agent that tries to enforce it within Lane County. Some people have already talked previously about nullification, and I want to speak a little bit about that as well. The idea of nullification was originally put forward by Thomas Jefferson, and the idea that a contract, the Constitution is a contract, the idea that a contract would only be interpreted by one party of that contract, is not rational. The states and the local governments should also have the authority to determine what the Constitution means, and it's entirely appropriate when one party of that contract oversteps the contract for the other parties to assert their authority. And that's what nullification is. No government is completely sovereign. Each jurisdiction has its own unique authority. And as it has been already said, at the county level, there is no authority greater than the county sheriff. Thank you for your consideration here tonight. I want to mention that there are a number of people that I know wanted to be here tonight from all sides of the political spectrum, and everyone that I've spoken to about this issue has been concerned about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Gold, followed by Nan Cohen.
Hello. Good evening, County Commissioners. I'm Rick Gold from Eugene and occupied Eugene. Tonight, I guess we're here to discuss what is a belligerent act and what is hostility. So, is everyone in this room who's come here tonight being belligerent and asking that you oppose by ordinance sections 1021 and 1022 as unconstitutional and unconscionable of the civil rights of Lane County citizens? This measure has a chilling impact on First Amendment rights. Federal District Judge Catherine Forrest. So tonight, I admire everyone else's comments about these two sections of the NDAA, and I want to speak specifically about the First Amendment. The First Amendment to the Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Today's First Amendments also include the freedom of information, government access, citizens' right to know, and the right to privacy. So why was this amendment so important that it was the first and not the third or the fifth or the ninth amendment? Thomas Jefferson said, of liberty, I would say that in the whole platitude of its extent, it is unobstructed action according to our will. But rightful liberty is unobstructed action to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. I do not add within the limits of law, because law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the right of an individual. Benjamin Franklin said, whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. James Madison said, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by the gradual and silent encroachments of those in power by the violent than by violent and sudden usurpations.
Thank you, Mr. Gold.
Oh, okay. I just encourage you to do all you can to oppose these. Thank you.
Nan Cohen, followed by Roxanne Wadke. And please correct me when you come up, Roxanne.
hope you can all hear me. My name is Nan Cohen. I live in Eugene. Hi. I'm going to read this. I'm nervous. I apologize. This is very serious, and I didn't think I'd ever have to speak about this stuff ever in my lifetime. I'm here to speak about the provisions, the sections 1021 and 1022 of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, otherwise known as the NDAA of 2012. Section 1021 and Section 1022 are clearly unconstitutional. They violate the United States Constitution, the State of Oregon Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. I have spent time watching, listening, and I've heard public comment on this subject from the beginning in February, and I appreciate what everyone has said. They speak for me as well. They've spoken up from the right, from the left, from in between, showing our commonality, which we have a lot in common. We're all people, human beings, thoughts, feelings, rights and freedoms. So we thought. So we hope we still have. We should. I appreciate this. What do I want? I want the provisions, sections 1021 and section 1022 repealed. That's what I want. I want them repealed. They have nothing to do with funding the armed forces. They were sneakily added in there because the people who put them in knew that otherwise they would not be approved. What do I want now? Right now what I want is for each of you and all of you together to please pass an ordinance, a resolution that states that sections 1021 and sections 1022 are clearly unconstitutional. I want for you to include the 10 objectives that Colin and Shane have written. I want you to go for the most effective and meaningful ordinance resolution that has teeth. You know, please be brave. It takes a lot of courage for all of us to come up here. I'm shaking. Why am I scared? It takes a lot of courage, and I know that you guys have courage too, and I really support you in moving forward with your courage. You're U.S. citizens too. We're all in the same boat. I appreciate and honor the work and resources that Shane Osborne and Colin Farnsworth have done and provided for you and for all of us. I hope you will too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Roxanne Watke, followed by Klaus Fussler. And Mr. Fussler is the last person I have signed up.
My name is Roxanne Watley. Thank each and every one of you for making this possible. And I know I speak for the people in this room that they do not want to see the rights to their Constitution done away with. And I feel that, for instance, when it says in the Constitution, which is our supreme law of the land, it says, "We the people, not we the government." And we elected you to be our commissioners to represent us, not to represent Republican, Democrat, whoever. It is to represent us, we the people. And who is to say who is a terrorist? They can pick you, or you, or you, or you, and say, "Get up, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, we're going to take you to jail." Or take your granddaughter, or whoever, because you don't agree the same way as we agree. And so we think it is wrong. And it's, like I said, the person beneath me said, it's a sneaky way of putting it through. And I think it is wrong. I think that each one of you, if you don't already have it, should get yourself a copy of this the Constitution of the United States and read it. And I think that you would educate yourself real well, and I know that you're doing your best, and I just want to thank each and every one of you.
Thank you. I took a test to become a citizen of the United States. Klaus Twissler, followed by Susan Clark.
Good evening, commissioners, fellow citizens. My name is Klaus Twissler. I have no comments prepared, but I am here this evening to speak in support of nullification, in support of your action to hopefully do more than, words are a good start, but they're not enough. An ordinance might also be a good start, maybe a little better than just words. Probably still not enough, but if you could go there, that would be great. A few thoughts that came to mind. Perhaps your ordinance or whatever you can draft might include a provision that there is no support for these illegal quote-unquote laws made, no monetary support given. In terms of teeth, you may be limited, but withholding resources might be an effective start. Non-compliance, if you will, codified non-compliance with these illegal shenanigans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pressler. We have two more. Susan Clark, followed by Leighton Wells.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Susan Clark, and I'm a veteran of the United States Navy, and I'm also a constitutional Republican, and I am of Japanese descent. I moved here from Lane County a few months ago, and I grew up and lived not too far from the Japanese internment camps in Tule Lake, California. That camp that I've driven by quite frequently is a reminder of what can happen to a group of American citizens living here today. They can be rounded up and they can be detained by the use of military force, all in the name of national security, foreign affairs, or other related programs authorized by this NDAA, where American citizens can be stripped of their civil liberties and personal property and detained without due process, without a judge and jury of the peers, and with warrantless searches and seizures that are all violations of our Fourth Amendment rights. The U.S. Constitution protects us from law enforcement, protects us from physical intrusion to our private properties. When I used to drive by the Japanese internment camps that detain people, the Japanese people, I often wondered if this would ever happen to me. I am an American. I was born and raised here. I serve my country. But the wording in the NDAA is very, very vague. And it can single out a group of people or persons as domestic terrorists. I really hope you oppose the NDAA. I hope you protect the citizens of Lane County and protect our constitutional rights. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Leighton Wells, followed by what is now our final speaker, Chris. I will quit saying that. It ain't over till it's over, right?
Good evening, and thank you for your patience. I'm Leighton Wells. I live in Springfield, and I left my tri-cornered hat in the car. I think that the county should refuse to participate in any way in the enforcement of these ordinances for simple, practical reasons. You don't want to pay an attorney to defend the county if someone is elected under this jingoistic set of statutes. I don't want to send somebody to Washington, D.C. to explain why the county participated in the enforcement of something that relies on the law of war, when the law of war applies to nations, and it does not apply to Al-Qaeda, which rejects nationality as a concept, and which refers to membership in Al-Qaeda. I haven't seen an Al-Qaeda directory, and I don't think you will, and thus anybody who says he's a member of Al-Qaeda is guilty of hearsay, right? This is really Roquefort cheese when it comes to legislation. You should reject it completely by what manner seems expedient to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris Brab, followed by Leela Trope.
Good evening, commissioners and fellow citizens. I'm Chris Brab. I live here in Eugene, and I'm deeply troubled about this NDAA. Recently, I would say within the last month, I was driving on Highway 99, and at the corner of Highway 99 and Highway 36, at the stoplight, in the parking lot right there where there used to be a doctor's office and there's a coffee shop and a gas station, I witnessed a number of heavily armed, military-clad, paramilitary men with the name Sheriff on the backs of their plate carriers, their armor carriers. I also saw what's called an MRAP vehicle, which is a very large vehicle. It'd probably take up the majority of this room. It's about 10 feet tall, and it had 2 gun turrets on the top of it, also an olive drab color, also with the name Sheriff on the back of it. And my concern is the use of these vehicles in Lane County. It was mentioned earlier tonight about the militarization of the police departments and various other law enforcement agencies around this country. And I have it on good authority that the Lane County Sheriff's Department received these vehicles and this equipment from the federal government and have been using this equipment for common warrant service. Used to be that a couple of men in blue would show up at the door to serve a warrant, and apparently no longer. Apparently they need armored vehicles and SWAT teams to serve a basic warrant.
You still have 1 minute.
Thank you. And so I would like some explanation at some point. I don't expect you to have answers tonight, but I would like some explanation at some point. Why does our sheriff and why does the Sheriff's Department have these paramilitary people with armor and armored vehicles and military weapons running around in the parking lot of a coffee shop on Highway 99? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leela Trope, followed by Bernie Doyle.
And as again, as per usual, I have no notes. But I wanted to say something that I think is really important. The word belligerent. I have heard that so much lately. I love it because we're in Lane County. And which one of the citizens of Lane County wouldn't generally come under the standard heading of belligerent? I mean, it's just awesome when you consider it, which is also the other scary part, because what is it? We don't know what it is. Belligerent is anything that people say, I don't like that and I'd like you to hear my opinion. It's different things to different people in different magnitudes. And the other thing that I have to say was new to me, and I should have gotten involved in the board when I had an opportunity 2 years ago to look at the Lane County Charter, and I didn't get on the charter board. Now I wish I had, because I've learned a lot about the home rule. And I think that Lane County has such an exciting opportunity to be in on the ground level of one of the major counties that has the major population, to carry that out and be one of the leading counties in the state, to have the legal right to do what we're asking you to do. And so that, I think, gives you precedent and cover and the ability to do it, to make this a resolution and potentially a good something, whatever it is, can go beyond a resolution that would become force of law, whatever's possible. And so I thank you very much. And legal counsel, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe. Bernie Doyle.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate what you've done here tonight. I invoked the Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't want to go away as a mystery guy here. I live in Albany. I'm a member of the Oath Keepers, and the young lady who spoke up here about that's Japanese. I started the first grade in a logging camp in northwestern Oregon. In the first grade, they came and took a Japanese family away. They worked on the section crew. I never saw them again. A few years back, I looked on the internet and I found that they had both passed away. So history repeats itself, and we don't want this to happen in our country. God bless America. Thank you very much. And we all have something in common, and that's the Constitution. And if we don't live by these standards and let that be the founding that our forefathers set up, we're going to miss the boat, and we don't want to give that up. Thank you very much, and thanks to all the folks that are here.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. An appropriate conclusion to the testimony tonight. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Well, thank you all for being here this evening. I will mention that one moment here. There's been a public hearing in order for the board to hear the concerns of Lane County citizens regarding the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, as codified in 10 U.S.C. 801. The section of the Federal Code clearly is interpreted by some to allow for the indefinite detention without trial of United States citizens in certain cases. With that, we conclude the public testimony, and at this point I will open the floor to discussion by the Board of Commissioners. Commissioner